My daughter replaced me with her stepdad. After I raised her alone, now she's begging me to walk her down the aisle, and I said, no. I never planned to be a single dad at 24. Nobody does. One morning, I came home from a night shift to find a note on the kitchen counter, Jenna's handwriting, rushed and uneven. It said, I can't do this anymore. Motherhood isn't for me. Don't try to find me. Our daughter, Lily, was 2 years old. She was sitting in her high chair, clutching her stuffed bunny, waiting for breakfast. I remember standing there, frozen. The cereal box slipped from my hand and hit the floor, scattering flakes across the tiles. I didn't even move to clean it up. I just stared at my little girl. She blinked up at me and said, Daddy? In that tiny voice that cracked something inside my chest. Those next few months were a blur. I worked 2 jobs, warehouse by night, delivery driver by day. I learned how to braid her hair from YouTube tutorials and burned through more frozen dinners than I cared to admit. Every night I'd check her breathing 3 times before I could sleep. People called me a hero, said they couldn't believe I was doing it alone. But I wasn't trying to prove anything. I just didn't want Lily to ever feel abandoned. There were days when I'd get home so tired I'd sit on the floor and let her climb on my shoulders while I tried not to cry. She'd giggle, tug my hair, and say, You're funny, Daddy. Those moments, her laughter, her trust, kept me alive. I used to think love would be enough. That if I gave her every ounce of myself, she'd never feel the emptiness her mother left behind. But love doesn't protect you from time, or people, or the way life quietly changes when you're too busy surviving to notice. And I didn't realize it then, but the world already had other plans for us. Lily was 10 the day her mother came back. I remember it like it was yesterday. Rain on the porch, a knock that felt too polite for what it brought. When I opened the door, there she was, Jenna, dressed in a cream coat, hair perfect, makeup flawless, like she'd just walked out of someone else's life. Behind her stood a man in a tailored suit, holding a bouquet of lilies. The irony didn't escape me. Hi, she said softly, like she hadn't disappeared for 8 years. This is Mark, my husband. Lily froze. She didn't remember much about her mom, but she recognized the word mother when Jenna knelt down and said, Hey, sweetheart, you've gotten so big. I didn't know what to feel. Rage, relief, confusion. My daughter, the kid who used to ask why her mom didn't love her, was now face to face with the woman who'd left her behind. I wanted to slam the door, but Lily looked up at me wide-eyed and whispered, Can I talk to her, Daddy? And in that moment, all I could think about was protecting her heart. Over the next few weeks, Jenna made herself present again, bringing gifts, asking to take Lily to lunch, acting like we'd just been figuring things out. Mark was always there, smiling, generous, careful with his words. He had that easy confidence money gives people. He'd show up with new dresses, tablets, even concert tickets. I told myself it was harmless, that Lily deserved to know her mother. But then she started saying things like, Mark says I should try private school, or Mom says I need better clothes for my age. One night I caught her calling him Dad by accident. She froze, waiting for me to react. I just smiled weakly and said, It's okay, kiddo. But it wasn't. Something in me knew that day. The door I'd opened out of love had just invited something in that I wouldn't be able to close. It started small. Weekend visits. Just to bond. Jenna said Lily deserved time with her mom, and Mark insisted he wanted to help however he could. I hated the idea, but Lily's eyes lit up at the thought of spending weekends at their mansion. They have a pool, Dad, she said, spinning in excitement. How could I say no to that? The first few weekends, she'd come home with stories, movie nights, shopping trips, dinners at fancy restaurants. I smiled and pretended it didn't sting when she compared their life to ours. I couldn't compete with imported toys and 5-star meals. I gave her love, structure, and stability, but to a 10-year-old, that doesn't sparkle the same way. Soon, the visits stretched longer. Mom said I can stay till Tuesday, she'd announce, already halfway packed. The calls I used to get every night turned into brief texts. The bedtime stories stopped. Then one day, I noticed she'd changed her phone wallpaper, from a picture of us at the fair to one of her and Mark on a yacht. My throat went dry. When I confronted Jenna, she gave me that smug, half-smile she always used when she wanted control. "Relax," she said. "She's just connecting with her stepfather. You should be grateful she has a good male figure in her life." I wanted to scream. Good male figure? I was the one who stayed. The one who worked myself into exhaustion just to make sure she never missed a meal. But I bit my tongue. For Lily's sake. That night, Lily called me James instead of Dad. Just slipped out casual, like it didn't mean anything. She didn't even notice. But I did, after she hung up. I sat there in the dark, the phone still in my hand, staring at the reflection of my tired face in the screen. It was the first time I realized I wasn't just losing my daughter. I was being replaced, piece by piece, word by word. Lily was 16 when she called me late one Sunday evening. Her voice trembled like she was rehearsing something she didn't want to say. "Dad," she started, and for a moment hearing her call me that again made me exhale. But the next sentence knocked the air right back out of me. I think I want to live with Mom and Mark full-time." I froze. "What do you mean, full-time?" I asked, my voice cracking. She hesitated. "It just feels more like home there. They have space, and I can focus on school without all the noise." Noise? That's what she called our life. The sound of my coffee maker at 6 a.m., the creak of the old stairs, the music we used to dance to on Sunday mornings. The noise that raised her. I tried to reason with her, to remind her how hard I'd worked to keep things steady, but she was already gone in her tone. Detached. Polite. Like she was speaking to a landlord about a lease, not her father. Jenna took it to court, of course. She came armed with lawyers talking about Lily's emotional well-being. The judge said Lily was old enough to decide where she wanted to live. I sat there, numb, watching the system confirm what my heart already knew. I'd lost her. The day she moved out, she packed everything quietly. No tears, no hesitation. Just the sound of drawers closing and boxes being taped shut. When she finally stepped outside, she hugged me once, brief and stiff, her perfume mixing with the cold air. "I'll visit," she said, but she didn't look at me when she said it. After she left, I walked into her empty room. The pink curtains, the half-finished painting on the wall, the stuffed bunny on her pillow. I sat on her bed until sunrise, realizing the house was silent for the first time in years. And somehow, silence hurt worse than any noise ever could. 2 years passed with barely a text. Then one morning, a thick white envelope arrived, Lily's high school graduation invitation. My chest tightened as I read the neat gold lettering. Proudly presented by Mr. and Mrs. Bennett. No mention of me. Not a single trace that I'd been the one behind every lunchbox, every scraped knee, every late-night study session when she was 10. I told myself it didn't matter, that I'd still go. I ironed my best shirt, polished my shoes, and showed up early, sitting near the back of the auditorium. Families filled the seats, mothers fixing collars, fathers holding cameras. I just sat there, hands folded, waiting for her name. When they called Lily Bennett, she walked across the stage in her cap and gown, radiant, confident. Mark stood in the front row, phone raised, cheering like a proud father. Jenna clapped beside him, her hand resting on his arm. Lily ran straight to them after the ceremony, hugging Mark first. He lifted her off the ground. For a moment, she glanced past him and saw me, just standing there with the flowers I'd brought. Her smile faltered. I raised my hand slightly in a small wave. She hesitated, then turned back to pose for photos with Mark and Jenna. That was the moment I knew my role had been rewritten. I wasn't Dad anymore. I was a supporting character in a story that used to belong to me. I left before the reception, walking through the parking lot alone, clutching the flowers until the stems snapped. When I got home, I laid them on the kitchen counter beside her old drawing, stick figures labeled me and Daddy. The ink had faded, but the words still hit hard. That night, I threw the invitation away. But even as I did, I couldn't shake the thought, some memories can't be discarded. They just sit there, quietly rotting where love used to live. I thought I'd already lost enough, but then came the part that broke me in a way I didn't know was possible. It started when a coworker stopped me in the break room, scrolling through his phone. "Hey, James, isn't this your daughter?" he asked, turning the screen toward me. There she was, Lily, in a sleek navy dress standing next to Mark at some charity gala. The caption read, "So proud of my dad for inspiring me every day." My stomach dropped. I read it again and again, hoping I'd misread. But no, there it was. She'd called him Dad. Publicly. Proudly. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The man who entered her life when she was 10, the man who bought her affection with money and charm, was now the one getting the credit for raising her. All my years of sacrifice had been erased with one Instagram caption. That night I called her. She answered, cheerful. "Hey, James," she said as if we were casual acquaintances. "James," I repeated. "Since when am I just James to you?" She went quiet. "Oh, sorry, it slipped out." "It's been slipping out a lot lately," I said, my voice shaking. "I saw your post. You called Mark your dad," she sighed. "It's just easier, okay? People get confused when I explain everything. He's basically been there for me lately, so basically been there." Those 3 words echoed louder than any argument we'd ever had. I hung up before my voice broke. Later, Jenna texted me saying, "You should be happy for her. She's got a stable life now." Stable. That word used to mean something. I sat alone on the couch, the room lit only by the glow of my phone screen. Her smiling face with Mark stared back at me, a stranger's version of the daughter I once knew. And for the first time, I realized she hadn't just replaced me. She'd rewritten our story. After that night, silence settled into my life like a second skin. No calls, no birthdays, not even a Merry Christmas text. At first, I'd check her social media just to feel connected, scrolling through her photos, trying to piece together who she'd become. Smiling faces, champagne toasts, vacations with Mark and Jenna, captions full of gratitude, none of it directed my way. Time blurred. I sold the old house and moved into a smaller apartment. The walls were bare, quiet. I filled the silence with small things, volunteering at the library, fixing up old furniture, pretending that keeping busy meant moving on. But every time I saw a girl with her father at the park or a teenager calling out, "Dad!" in the grocery store, my chest would tighten. 5 years passed before her name appeared on my phone again. It was a message request, hidden under a pile of spam and notifications. The preview read, "Hey, can we talk?" My hands went cold. I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. "Hi, Dad. I know it's been a while. I'm sorry, I'd like to see you. There's something important I want to tell you. I must have read that message 100 times. Part of me wanted to delete it to protect what was left of me. But another part, the father in me, wanted to believe maybe she finally remembered who I was. I agreed to meet her at a cafe downtown. The night before, I barely slept. I kept wondering what she'd look like now. Would she still have the same dimple on her left cheek? Would she still laugh with that tiny snort she used to hate? When I finally walked into that cafe, my heart was racing. I hadn't seen her in half a decade. And when she turned around, smiling nervously, I realized I didn't recognize the woman sitting in front of me. She stood up when she saw me, her smile tight, uncertain, like someone greeting a stranger they were supposed to know. "Dad," she said softly, and for a second that word almost undid me. She looked older, sharper around the edges, but her eyes, they were still the same. We sat down. The cafe hummed with quiet chatter and the smell of burnt espresso. Small talk filled the first few minutes. Work, life, the weather. I could tell she was rehearsing whatever she'd come to say. Then, finally, she took a breath and looked straight at me. "I'm getting married," she said. The words hit harder than I expected. I forced a smile. "That's great, sweetheart. Congratulations." She fiddled with her ring, eyes darting around before she said it. "I want you to walk me down the aisle." For a moment, I thought I misheard. "What? I mean, Mark said it's only right that my real dad does it," she said quickly. "He even offered to step back." I just stared at her. The man who replaced me was now giving me permission to play father for a day. A performance for the guests, for appearances, for her conscience. "Why now, Lily?" I asked quietly. "Why me?" She hesitated, searching for the right words. "Because people will expect it, and because you're my dad." Her tone cracked slightly on that last word, but it felt rehearsed, like an actor delivering a line. I looked at her hands, manicured, perfect, trembling just a little, and I thought about all the times those same hands had clung to my shirt when she was scared of thunder. I wanted to say yes. God, I did. I wanted to believe that maybe this was the olive branch we both needed. But deep down, I knew this wasn't reconciliation. It was reputation. She didn't want her father back. She just didn't want the world to see she'd thrown him away. And that realization hurt more than every year of silence combined. That night, after we met, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the same chair where I used to rock her to sleep, staring at the wall until it blurred. Every memory hit like a wave I couldn't escape. The nights I stayed up when she had the flu, the mornings I walked her to school holding her tiny hand, the birthdays where I scraped together enough for a cake just to see her smile. And now she wanted me to walk her down an aisle. Not because she missed me, not because she wanted her father, but because it looked good on camera. I poured myself a drink, then another. I'm not a heavy drinker, but that night I needed something to quiet the noise in my chest. I kept seeing her face across that cafe table. How polite she was, how distant, how she called me Dad but couldn't look me in the eyes when she said it. Around midnight, I pulled out an old photo album. The edges were frayed, fingerprints smudging the plastic covers. There she was, missing teeth, messy hair, paint on her cheeks, smiling like the sun lived in her eyes. In one picture I was holding her on my shoulders, both of us laughing. I could almost hear her voice saying, "Don't let go, Daddy." And I didn't. I never did. Not until she made me by 3 a.m. I'd written a letter, one I knew I'd never send. It started simple. "You had a father once," but the words poured out like blood. I told her how I used to keep her old drawings in my wallet, how I still paused every time I saw a girl her age in the grocery store, how I forgave her long before she asked. But the last line, it broke me to write. "I love you, Lily, but I don't know if I can do this anymore." When I finished, I folded the letter, slid it into a drawer, and just sat there, empty, quiet, and finally realizing what rock bottom really felt like. I told her I'd come to the wedding. I didn't say I'd walk her down the aisle. I think part of me wanted closure, to see the ending with my own eyes, even if it tore me apart. The church was beautiful. White roses, soft piano music, laughter echoing from the hall. I arrived early, sitting in the last pew, watching everyone swirl around in coordinated chaos. No one noticed me. Maybe that was for the best. Then I saw her, Lily, dressed in white, glowing, perfect. For a moment I forgot everything, the years of silence, the lies, the distance. She looked like the little girl I used to carry on my shoulders. Then she turned, saw me, and her eyes widened with a mix of guilt and hope. Before the ceremony, she asked to see me alone. We stepped into a side room, quiet except for the muffled sound of guests chatting. "Dad," she started, her voice trembling. "Please, walk me down the aisle. I know I've hurt you. I was young, stupid, and I didn't understand. But please, just this once." I stared at her, at the makeup covering the tears already forming in her eyes. "You wanted Mark to be your father," I said softly. "Let him finish the job." She shook her head, tears spilling. "It's not like that anymore. I know I was wrong, I want to fix it. I wanted to believe her. But looking at her, all I could see was the years she'd erased me. The empty birthdays, the way she called another man Dad while I clapped from the shadows. "I can't, Lily," I whispered. "Not today." When the music began, I watched from the doorway as Mark took her arm. The guests rose, cameras flashed, and before she reached the altar, I turned and walked out, quietly, calmly, like a man finally done chasing ghosts. 3 days after the wedding, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, Lily was standing there, mascara streaked, hair tangled, clutching her heels in one hand. She looked nothing like the glowing bride from the photos I'd seen online. Her voice cracked the moment she spoke. "He told everyone," she said. I frowned. Told everyone what? That he raised me. That you were never around. That he let you come to the wedding out of pity. Her voice broke completely. She told me how, during the reception, Mark gave a toast claiming he had stepped in when another man couldn't handle fatherhood. The crowd clapped. She said she froze, humiliated, realizing too late the truth of who Mark really was. Someone who loved ownership, not love. I listened quietly. Part of me wanted to say I told you so, but the other part, the father part, just hurt. She cried harder than I'd ever seen, saying, "I was so stupid, Dad. I thought he loved me like you did." I made her some tea, the same way I used to when she was sick as a kid. She sat at the kitchen table, eyes red, hands shaking. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for everything. I don't know why I treated you like you didn't matter." I sat across from her, staring at the same chipped mug I'd used for years. "You don't owe me an apology," I said. "But forgiveness doesn't mean things go back to how they were. Some bridges don't rebuild. They just stop burning." She nodded, tears spilling again. "Will we ever be okay?" I looked at her for a long time. "Maybe," I said softly, "but not today." The silence that followed wasn't angry this time. It was just honest. And for the first time in years, I felt peace. Not from being loved again, but from finally letting go. Months have passed since that night. Lily visits occasionally. No grand apologies, no forced smiles. Just quiet mornings where she sits at the kitchen table, drinking coffee while I read the paper. We don't talk about the wedding, or Mark, or the years we lost. Some things don't need words. They just hang in the air, understood by silence. Sometimes she helps me in the garden. I'll catch her staring at the old swing set I never took down, the one she used to beg me to push her on. She doesn't say anything, but I see it in her eyes, the recognition of what she threw away. In another life, maybe I would have demanded more. Maybe I would have wanted her to beg for forgiveness or explain why she forgot me. But I'm too tired for that now. I've learned that closure doesn't always come with a hug or an apology. Sometimes it's just choosing peace over pain. I volunteer at the youth center now. The kids there remind me of Lily at 7, hopeful, curious, full of questions. When they ask about my daughter, I just smile and say, "She's finding her way." And maybe that's enough. There's a photo of us on my mantle. Lily sitting on my shoulders at the county fair, cotton candy in her hand, sunlight in her hair. I used to stare at it with grief. Now I see it differently. It's proof that once, for a time, I gave her everything I had. I used to think forgiveness meant bringing someone back into your life. Now I know it can mean wishing them well from afar. The other day, she called me Dad again. No hesitation, no pretense, just Dad. And for the first time, I didn't need it to feel whole. I smiled, told her to drive safe, and hung up. Because I finally understood. She might always be my daughter, but my peace no longer depends on her remembering that. The screen fades to black as the sound of a door softly closing echoes.